So often I get, because I'm severely physically disabled, people also assume that I'm mentally disabled. It's probably the most frustrating thing about having a disability is having someone size me up and then assume that I'm just mentally incompetent. Yeah, I was so mad. Anyway. Hey everyone, Grace here again with pro tips for paras, and today we are going to be talking about caregiver funding. So my caregiver funding is a program called CECIL, which is Community Supports for Independent Living. And I think that's a really ironic title. We'll get into that later. But so a year ago, actually 2 years ago, I found out about this funding when I was kind of looking into giving my mom a break and being able to gain some independence. We found out about CECIL, and the whole program seemed like it was so amazing because it was government funding that they provided for you so that you could essentially hire your own caregiver team. You didn't have to work with home care or anything like that. You could pick your caregivers and you can just live independently. So it sounded amazing. It sounded like something that would totally help me with my goals with being independent, living on my own. So we started this process of trying to get this funding, and it was the most horrible process I have ever been through in my life to try and obtain funding. Like, it was even worse than trying to get on disability income assistance. The application process, first of all, the application itself is 120 pages long. It's just filled with policies and what you can and you can't do, and a whole bunch of other crap, and then forms and forms and forms of proving that I'm disabled, having my doctor fill out these forms to say that I was disabled. I had to have letters of recommendation. I had to write an essay saying why I thought I needed this assistance and how it would help me in my life. And then the kicker came when we were told that we also had to time every single activity, every single task that I do in a day. So that means if I go on the toilet and I take 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, I have to time that. From the time that I sit down on the toilet to the time I get off, I have to time that. And I have to write it all down in these task logs, how much time it takes me to do each activity. So I had to do this for 7 days, every single day, timing every single activity that I do. And then I had to have a social worker come in, someone I had never met in my life. They come in and basically they retime all of those activities. So they stand there with a stopwatch while I'm going to the bathroom, and they will literally watch me go to the bathroom and time it and then write it down on their little clipboard, and then we move on to the next activity. It was the most degrading process I have ever had to go through to receive funding. I have never in my life gone through something like that in order to obtain what I needed for funding.
Well, it's not even like, yes, it is funding, but it's quality of life. It's living. It's just daily tasks.
Advocating for myself and obtaining what I need, and the lines get blurred. They provide me with this funding, so they think that I'm just going to do whatever they tell me to, and I basically have to give up my rights as a human being because they give me this money and I should be grateful, and you know. But I was just mortified because not only was I having to time all these activities by myself, and I mean, that was a huge amount of work, and just, it was exhausting mentally and physically to have to go through that. But then you have someone who's a complete stranger. They come into your home and they stand there and watch you get changed and go to the bathroom and eat your breakfast and things like that. And they're timing you with a stopwatch and they're writing notes. It makes you feel like you're a little lab rat or something. And I was told that they had, maximum amounts of time that they would give you for each activity. And
this is an able-bodied person who's making these decisions.
Yeah,
right?
So this all goes to an advisory committee, the Cecil Advisory Committee, and every single one of them is able-bodied. Granted, some of them are like physiotherapists or occupational therapists, but still able-bodied. Like, when it comes down to it, even if you are professionally in the field, you don't know what it's like to be disabled.
No, they're not living the life.
No. And what disabled person is the same as another disabled person? It doesn't work that way. Like, what human is the same as another human?
Well, you and Tanel are a perfect example.
Yeah. We all do things differently. We all take different amounts of time to complete tasks throughout the day. And yeah, it's ridiculous to say that because I'm disabled and because I'm applying for this funding, I have to fit into this little box that they have created for me. And if I don't, so sad, too bad. Once that was all done, I had to go through a mental assessment. And this is something that in my whole life as a person with a physical disability, emphasis on physical disability, I have never, ever had to go through a mental assessment, ever, for any kind of, it's just never been a question. I mean, it's very obvious within like 2 seconds of meeting me, that I am fully mentally competent.
Oh, yes.
So the whole thing was just so degrading. But anyway, during the mental assessment, they literally ask me, have you cried within the last 3 days? Have you been sad in the last 3 days?
So this is a stranger coming into your home asking you these?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. So we go through the mental assessment. We go through all those hoops that I had to jump through. This process took me a year to get it all completed, because it's just so extensive, and their requirements are they're almost not humanly possible. And I think that they do this on purpose because half of the people probably would give up. I mean, there was a point where I wanted to give up. It's like, I don't even know if this is worth it. I mean, I put so much time and effort and basically disregarded any dignity that I had left in order to get this funding. I don't even know if it's worth it. And I think a lot of people just give up. But I was trying to focus on the fact that what it was going to give me was going to be worth what I was putting into it. And so all of this information that we collected for this year was taken to this advisory committee. And this social worker, who again doesn't know me, had only spent a few days with me, she presents my case to this advisory committee. And they decide, based off of her presentation, that they're going to allot me this many hours a day of care. And it amounts to this many hours of care a month. So originally I was approved for 8 hours of care a day. I think it was 240 hours a month. of care. And that was because I was going into the hospital. So they thought that because I would be having nurses take care of me for part of the time, that I wouldn't need as much caregiver support, which was more or less true. So I was fine with that. So I got this funding, got into the hospital and did all my stint there. And then when I came home, they said, well, you can reapply, or you can ask for an increase in hours once you get home. You figure out what you need from there. So what they didn't tell me was that to reapply for more hours, you have to go through the whole process again.
Which took you a year.
Yeah. So again, going through the assessments, the timesheets, the mental assessments, the assessments from the social worker. I did that all again. So I got the funding in July. I did it all again in November of 2018. And the advisory committee came back and said, no, we're not giving you more hours. We don't feel that it's justified. So then I had to go through, this was like right before Christmas, that I got this word back from them. So I of course, appealed it because my level of functioning is similar to that of a quadriplegic. So if I want to do anything, I need assistance for it. Honestly, the only thing that I can do by myself is hang out and work at my computer. But as soon as I need something, I need help.
So can you give me some examples of what these things you need help with? Just simple daily tasks.
So going to the bathroom, I can't go to the bathroom by myself. I have to have someone, pull down my pants, put me on my commode, put me over the toilet, wipe my butt, put my clothes back on, put me back in my chair. I can't dress myself at all, so I have to have someone dress me. I can't feed myself. I have to have someone set up my food for me, including making my food. I can't leave my home without having assistance because I can't open doors or, once I'm outside, what am I going to do? If I were to drop my phone on the floor, can't pick it up myself. There's pretty much everything in my day requires assistance from someone. So the fact that they had only approved me for 8 hours of care a day, that only gave me care from like 10 in the morning to 6 at night, which obviously leaves me with how do I get up in the morning and how do I go to bed? It just didn't work. So with the appeal process, I ended up having to talk to Cecil representatives themselves, but they just have such disregard for my life and my schedule. So they told me they were going to call me on Boxing Day of 2018 so we could hash this out and I could talk to them and advocate for myself. And I waited around in my house all day on Boxing Day. And at the end of the day, they called me and they said, we need to reschedule. So in the meantime, I already have caregivers hired and I'm not getting the care hours that I need. So I had to decrease the wage that the caregivers were getting in order to stretch out the amount of hours that I could have of care. So basically half my employees wanted to quit. I mean, understandably, because they were getting a wage and I needed to decrease it. So I was dealing with that. And just my whole ability to function was being jeopardized because I didn't have the care that I needed. So it was a really difficult time just because I was trying to advocate for myself and I was dealing with my caregivers who were obviously not impressed, not happy with the fact that, they weren't getting the hours that they were supposed to be getting and they weren't getting the wage they were supposed to be getting. So we were all in uproar. So a few days after Boxing Day, I ended up getting a call from the Cecil representatives finally. And I explained my case to them again, was able to advocate for myself, which I think is really important. And they basically told me that if I was staying in my house all day long, not working, not going out, that I could probably get the funding that I needed. But this is their words, they said, why should we waste our taxpayer dollars on sending someone to assist you with work?
So you're not supposed to have a life?
Exactly. It's essentially what they were saying. So it was just it's a horrible process, because obviously I contested that. I said, well, if I don't have assistance for work, then I don't work. I can't go leave my house and then all of a sudden, yay, I can function by myself. Like, that's not how it works.
So you're trying to contribute to society and have a job and have a life and just be involved with the community, and they're saying if you do that, we aren't going to help you.
Yes.
But they said they will help you if you stay at home and do nothing.
Yeah. Because I think essentially what they were saying is, if I'm saying that I'm so low functioning that I require this extensive care, then I shouldn't be able to function in society. Which is such a misconception, and it's so just such a wrong picture of what disability is. Even if I was that low, well, and I am that low functioning, but that doesn't, exactly. That doesn't mean that I can't function in society. I can function in society if I am given the correct support.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with that? What is wrong with providing someone to help me work and to help me impact society the way that I do? Anyway, I had, I think, probably 3 or 4 discussions with the Cecil representatives. And then they said, okay, well, we're going to have to reassess you again. So again, I went through the timesheets. And this time, instead of sending me the social worker, they sent me my own occupational therapist to do the timing. And this is where things started to change, because the occupational therapist knows me. She's been with me since I was a kid. And so she knows what my functioning level is, and she knows the support that I need. And so she was able to help me advocate properly and show that I did need the level of support that I was requesting. And so in January, they submitted it all again to the advisory committee, and I got approved for 13 hours of care a day. I think it's like 388 hours a month, which they've told me is one of the highest levels of support they've ever given to anyone. I don't know if that's true or not, but and after that, life was really good. I mean, this Caregiver Funding is actually an amazing program. It allowed me to move out. It allowed me to have this level of independence that I have, to immerse myself in society and be able to sustain my job and all of that, which is amazing. But again, the program places such restrictions on me. It's the same as, the disability income assistance. Because this year, just a couple of months ago, I ended up having to do my annual check-in with them. And again, new social worker, one I haven't met before, she comes into my house. And actually, she called me like a week before she came, and she said, I'm coming on this day. And I said to her, well, I'm working that day. I'm sorry. And she said, well, I'm sorry, that's when I'm coming. So again, just such a disrespect for the fact that I work, that I function in society, that I'm not going to drop everything as soon as they call me and say that they need to do a reassessment. So she came in and she sat down and she said, okay, I have to do the mental assessment again. So I'm like, all right, I'm preparing myself for this with the, have you been sad for 3 days? And then she says, okay, I have to do a new test on you. It's a memory test. And I'm like, okay, what is this? And so she literally starts picking up objects on my table, asking me to identify them. She picked up a pen and she said, what is this? And then she said, what do you use it for? And then she asked me to say a sentence, and then she asked me to spell a word and spell it backwards. And she laid down a picture on the table and asked me to copy out the picture with pen and paper and a bunch of other stuff. And at the end I said to her, so what was this for? And she said, I don't know you. That's why. And I just looked at her and I said, look, did you not read my chart before you came? No response, of course. But I was just so, it just still leaves me speechless, because there's this line that has been blurred, that because I'm receiving physical funding or for physical support, that I also need to be mentally assessed.
A physical disability, not a mental disability.
Yes. And I went through her whole questionnaire before that and answered everything normally and the way that you would expect someone to answer. And I gave her no reason to question that I was mentally not stable. But it was just such an insult to me, because I've graduated high school with honors. I started a nonprofit society when I was 14 years old. I've been running it for 10 years. I run 2 other nonprofit societies. I've been to college. It is so insulting to me to have someone come into my home and make judgments on my mental abilities and then put me through that kind of testing and just totally disrespect me as a person and disrespect my rights, and say that essentially say that because I'm physically disabled, obviously I'm mentally disabled too. Like, the lines between physically and mentally disabled have been very much blurred.
So then what happened?
So I went through this testing, and then she said to me, well, because not much has changed, we'll just resubmit your timesheets as they were last year, or for your last reassessment, and we should be good to go. And I said, great, that's good. Then a couple weeks later, she came back and said, oh, we're going to need you to retime your transfers with your lift. And I said, all right, well, fine. So I did that. And then again, a couple days before Christmas, she called me and she said, we're going to have to retime all your tasks. I said, I don't understand this. Why? I've told you nothing's changed, and I'm happy with my funding. I've never complained about it. I'm happy with the hours that I'm receiving, and they're great. And she said, well, you receive over 300 hours of funding a month, so we're a bit more strict on you. I said, so because I'm more severely physically disabled than some of your other clients, I have to jump through 10 more hoops than they do. But the thing I'm frustrated with the most is that, again, this stranger, this social worker who's only spent like 3 days with me, is going to take this assessment of hers to the advisory committee, and I don't know if she's advocating for me properly. I don't know what she's saying to them. I don't know if she's giving them a proper representation of who I am and what I need. And for all I know, they could decide that they're going to take away my funding. They're going to put me back to my 8 hours of care a day, and then I would be pretty much screwed because I've already moved out. I've already made those life choices. And again, I've hired my caregivers to have this many hours a day at this wage. And I just can't even imagine going through a change again. And for what? There's no justification for it. It's just a constant battle to receive the things that I need. And I'm just constantly taken advantage of. And the sad thing is, nobody seems to care about it. It's not all over the news that that my rights are being infringed upon and taken away. It's not okay, but it's not out there. And why shouldn't we be able to advocate? Why shouldn't we be able to say, this is not right? Without being afraid that they're going to take away my funding because I've spoken out. Yeah. I don't even know what else to say.
What happens now? Where are things at today? Or is that kind of it?
So right now I'm at the point where I am trying to retime my tasks. I am trying to fit that in with my work schedule and with running the 2 other nonprofits and everything else that I have to do. And so I'm trying to do that. And then on January 15th, I am going to have the social worker come in and do her timing. And I'm pretty nervous about this because it's not my OT doing it. So I don't know if she's going to represent my life properly. And then she is going to present this all to the advisory committee, and I'm going to find out whether or not I get to stay where I'm at, or if they're going to decrease my hours. Worst case scenario is that I would have to backtrack. I probably wouldn't be able to live on my own if I wasn't receiving the amount of hours that I have now, because it would be unsafe for me to be on my own without care, without someone here.
So where would you go?
I would have to be back with my parents. And I mean, my mom has kind of created her own life now because she doesn't have to look after me anymore. All my independence, everything that I have worked towards, all the steps that I have taken to have my own life, it would all be gone if I had my hours decreased. And it's just so frustrating that I can't even really advocate for myself to this board. I've never been able to speak to this advisory committee myself. So it's just disappointing, because it's a fantastic program, and if they were using it in the way that it should be used, it would give so many people such an improved quality of life. Thank you everyone for listening to my stories on caregivers and caregiver funding. If you're going through something similar, please remember that it is so important to advocate for yourself and to surround yourself with people who support you and that you matter.